I legitimately have no idea what I just saw. Legitimately have no idea. Popular theme song here. I wasn't planning on going to the movies today. It's the second to last day of my break. Got to go back to work on Monday. Saw a lot of movies this week and wasn't planning on seeing another one. But I was faced with one of the universal truths of my existence, and that is too much time spent with nothing to do and nothing to occupy my mind makes my brain go off in very, very weird directions, and I needed something to kind of distract myself, and I think I got it. So this is a movie that, as I'm walking out, because that's about the amount of time I have to compile my thoughts and how I'm going to present my review, from the time I get up to the theater to the time I get into the car. So I'm trying to form words and piece together how I want to dissect this film, and I just am having a hell of a time, because this film is a film that I hated, was annoyed by, was confused by, was bored by, then really fucking engrossed in, and then finally left angry at. So it had all of these pieces in it, and trying to formulate my thoughts and how I want to present this is proving to be equal to the task of our main character trying to deal with life back on Earth again. I'm sure the two are exactly comparable. I mean, someone coming down after having witnessed the eternal majesty of the heavens, and some guy sitting in his car trying to figure out how to, present a review. They're exactly the same thing. You hear reporters and psychiatrists say this all the time. So here's the thing. So let's talk about, so what's this movie about? So this movie is about, it is inspired by true events, and it was one of those things that I didn't realize until almost a third or fourth of the way through the movie that I recognized this story. A few years ago, an astronaut was arrested for driving just an insane amount of distance. They called her the diaper astronaut because she wore a diaper while driving so she wouldn't have to stop. That's how people remember the story. Basically planning to go and kidnap another astronaut who had gotten an assignment over her so that she could get on the shuttle or whatever it was. And so that serves as the basis for this movie. And when I say basis, it's kind of like an episode of Dragnet. And all the names are changed to protect the innocent. I went back and looked it up as the credits were rolling, because I wanted to kind of familiarize myself to make sure I hadn't imagined it. And it's all the names are different. It's okay, I get it. So Natalie Portman plays our main character, Lucy Cola. Interesting name. An astronaut who has gone to space, clearly, and unbeknownst to her or really anyone, suffers an extreme amount of PTSD after coming back and trying to reintegrate into her life on Earth. Because apparently, and this is something that came as complete shock to me, apparently strapping yourself into a rocket, letting off a series of massive explosions directly under your ass, shooting up into the cold, bleak blackness of outer space, witnessing the expanse and enormity of the universe, the eternal mysteries that it holds, dancing around in a place with no air, no oxygen, and if you get a little crack in your protective covering, it means instant and painful death. Observing the Earth, mother to us all, and all of its majesty, spinning slowly as you witness the lights from the planet's surface beaming out in the eternal void of space apparently is kind of a mindfuck for some people. Who knew? Captain Picard never seemed to have that kind of trouble with it. But anyway, so she is suffering from severe PTSD, which begins slowly with her, not being able to relate to her husband. She begins to have an affair with one of the other astronauts, played by John Hamm. And she's training for another mission where there's a younger girl who's, kind of gunning for her spot. They never say it directly like that, but that's kind of what they're implying. And she just slowly starts to crack up. Like, if I can't tell you how we got to the point we got to of a person dealing with because I thought going to see this, what I thought I was going to get was a story about, trying to relearn that the beauty here on Earth is just as, compelling as the beauty out there in space. The mysteries here of life and love and all that are just as important as the eternal mysteries we face in the cosmos. I thought that's what we were going to. We did not. That is not what we got. Here's a compliment I'm going to pay the movie. It's one of not very many, but I'm gonna pay the compliment. This is the movie, in my opinion, that Joker wanted to be. Because in this movie, you really do watch as a person slowly cracks. And like, if I had to pinpoint for you at what point in this movie it shifted from, trying to readapt to life on Earth to, holy shit, a suspense thriller, I can't point it out to you. That's how kind of seamless it is, that transition. So that's some good directing, that's some good acting from Natalie Portman. We shouldn't be surprised by it. Natalie Portman's a phenomenal actor. I wish she wouldn't do accents. I don't know. Accents do not fit her very well. She did better in this one than she did in the that Jackie O movie a few years back, but it still wasn't great. So that's the compliment I need to pay the film. It really took us in a direction I didn't think we were going, and did so in an interesting and compelling way. That being said, for the most part, I get what the director was going for. The director, I didn't see who actually directed the movie. I should have really looked, because it's really important to what we're going to talk about. The director clearly believes in the mantra that film is a visual medium, and therefore decides to use a lot of visual tricks, a lot of, different shots, different movements of the camera, different special effects to kind of convey the isolation, the weightlessness. That's the only way I can really put it. The unstable mindset of the character. Again, starting small and then expanding ever outward. This can be anything from special effects of her, the background suddenly turning into space, to this weird shot where she's standing in her living room and she finds out her grandmother, or the woman who raised her, had a stroke, and she starts moving forward and all the scenery starts going past her. She goes out of her house onto the street, moves through the street into the hospital, all the way along and into her grandmother's room. Shots of her kind of laying on a car and slowly rising up off of it. She imagines liftoff. The director really is trying to use a lot of visual cues and visual things to help get the point across. Problem is, boy, howdy, are they distracting. They are really distracting to the point where it makes the movie really hard to watch. It's one of those films that I think, now that I have seen it, if I ever wanted to go and see it again, I may appreciate it a little bit more now that I know where it's going. But watching it fresh, the suddenness of some of these tricks, the constant use of them, it takes you out of the film. And and again, now that I've seen the whole picture, I know that what he's trying to go for is to kind of show that isolation and that loneliness and that bizarre mindset that goes along with post-traumatic stress, that goes along with depression and all of these other things. So I know that's what he was going for, but as a audience member, it was just brutally distracting. One in particular, and I don't know what the fuck this was supposed to do. I legitimately don't know what this is supposed to do. They kept playing with the orientation of the screen. I'm going to try to describe this as best I can. So it starts out, widescreen, obviously, taking up the full screen. Then, when she comes back to Earth, the screen shrinks down to kind of like if you were watching a standard definition thing on a DVD or on Netflix or something. You know how shows that were made before HD, so they didn't have the widescreen thing look, so they have the sides cut off. So it would do that for a long time. Then sometimes the screen would shrink down into this really narrow strip for a lot of establishing shots. They do one where she's coming in and the entire right half of the screen blacks out, so you only see her on this side. And then when she moves into the other room, it expands out and shrinks down again. And this happens so fucking much, and it is so obvious. It's not something that's not a subtle little visual cue that's happening. It's a thing where you're like, okay, why is this happening? Why is the screen moving? Why are we suddenly in a really tiny thing? I tried to track it, because I was trying to think that maybe it was a thing that, every shot on Earth was supposed to be small, and when she flashed back to space, it would widen out. That didn't happen. I tried to track it for about, I'd say maybe 20, 30 minutes, and it started giving me a headache. I couldn't keep track of what the fuck it was doing and where the fuck it was going and all of this. It was just very... it was very irritating. So again, visual tricks that I just felt were so distracting. And I know, again, if I went and watched the film now, once again, maybe I wouldn't think so. Maybe I'd be able to see the nuances, but I don't think I want to do that. This film literally fucked with my head. There's that. Another thing that kind of came up that is, it feels like it's a theme or a plot they were trying to go for, but it never really flushed out, is Lucy, our main character, will sometimes have these very misogynistic statements that kind of fly in the face of a lot that's going on. I get that, especially, again, now that we've seen the whole film, I get that she's not supposed to be a character we're necessarily sympathizing with, that, she's cracking up, so I kind of get that now. But there's this point, her niece is living with them. Her brother keeps dumping his daughter with her and her husband, the guy she's cheating on. And at one point, the daughter's having some kind of crisis. She's mad because the dad called or something. It's very unclear. I keep saying that. It's very unclear, because a lot of stuff in this movie is very unclear. It does that thing of jumping very quickly from scene to scene, shot to shot. Apparently, the whole thing is only supposed to take place within a few weeks, but you can't tell if it's weeks, months, years, what the time frame is. Anyway, sorry, off on another tangent. So she goes in there and she sits down next to the daughter and she says something vaguely like, your dad was always like that. He always left messes. I had to clean up after him. He was in charge, but I was the one who had to do this. I was 9 and he was 15. Boys are like that. Boys can make the messes, but we have to clean it up. But we can do something they can't do. We can change. And I'm sitting there, and I'm trying not to get too pissed off, because I'm also trying to remind myself that as a female astronaut, I have no doubt she faced misogyny. I have no doubt of that. I'm sure it happened. And I'm sure it was a factor in pushing herself so hard to the point of breaking. So I'm not saying that is not a factor in what caused a character like this to crack up. What I'm saying is that as the film presents it, we see no evidence of misogyny. All of her male co-workers speak about her, about how great she is, about how perfect she is, how clever she is, how smart she is, how brave she is. The misogyny that we see comes from John Hamm's character, the guy she's having an affair with, because he is kind of a use 'em and lose 'em kind of person, and he does use her. But here's the thing, it's an affair she initiated. So she initiated it. He was hitting on her, and she went for it. She could have said, no, I'm married, and stepped off, but no, she initiated. So it feels like there was supposed to be some kind of subplot about misogyny. Because even when she's cracking up at the very end, she's talking to the girl she had come to kidnap. She's sitting there going, we have to be harder, we got to be better than them. So it feels like they were trying to do some weird thing about the misogyny these two faced, and that is never addressed anywhere in the film. You never see evidence of it. So maybe we're left to ask again, like with Joker, was this a real thing? Was it perceived? Is it just her looking for justification for her actions? And all of this, I guess what I'm getting at here is our main character is not incredibly likable, which I guess is, again, the point, I'm struggling to think of what else to say about this, because there's a lot to say, but it all comes back to the same basic principle. I think this movie is well-intentioned. I think it had something to say, and I think they tried to use the visual elements to the best of their ability to help tell that story. But I don't think it comes together well, and I don't think it holds up well. I don't think it snaps together in places. The visual things are too distracting. Again, the quick jumps to scenes make it very hard to follow what's going on. But again, I always hate saying things like that because, again, having obviously not to this level, but having suffered certain elements of PTSD and depression in my life, I know that that's kind of what the sensation feels like. Time just kind of seems to happen. So, I think they were really trying to tell a really interesting story here, and in a way they did, but I feel like they tripped over their own feet. I think subtlety might have been called for here. Final grade. Let's just wrap this up, because this movie is just it's in my head, and it's making me. I went to the movies to not be crazy. Final grade for Lucy in the Sky. God, I do not know. I am having a hard time with this one, because there are a lot of elements that I like. Like I said, the trip it takes us on is really interesting. It's, again, not the movie I thought it was going to be, but if you ask me, did you enjoy it, I'm going to have to say, for the large part, no. I was bored, frustrated, and getting a slight headache due to it. So, God, final grade for this one, Jeez. I hate to say it because I've handed a lot of these out over this spring break or fall break. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go a C- on this one. Like I say, this was the movie Joker wanted to be, but it was too in your face. This one, I think, was subtle, or not subtle. Subtle in its storytelling, not subtle in the way it told the story. So yeah, like I said, if I went back and watched this again, maybe I'd appreciate some of the visual cues a little bit more. I'd understand what they were getting at and what they were talking about. But I'm going to be honest, I do not see myself sitting down to watch this movie again. I just don't. So yeah, so there's that. Okay, so there you go. I really do think this is the last one for fall break at the movies. I really don't want to go see anything. We'll see, and I've got other things I got to do tomorrow. So we're going to put a bow on it. I wish maybe we could have ended it on a stronger note, but there you go. So, that's it for me for this fall break. But we'll be back next week. A lot of stuff coming out as we're wrapping up the year. So, I'm looking at the release schedule, and I'm seeing a lot of fun stuff. So, looking forward to it, and I hope you join me. So, until next time, drive safe, and I'll see you at the movies.